Is audio engineering too technical, or is it not technical enough? That's what we're going to be discussing today on the Working Audio Tools podcast with myself, Ed Thorne, and Paul Third. Paul, what's got you wondering this week whether we're technical or not technical enough? Because in the background behind this podcast, we do chat on a regular basis, often asking ourselves how many other engineers are rabbit holing the amount of subjects that we investigate to the extent that we investigate them. And is that necessary? And then we come across professionals every now and then who throw a spanner in the works because it appears they're not remotely technical at all.
Yep.
And they're just going by feel, man. And we get a bit confused thinking, well, surely you have to be this knowledgeable to be this good.
Yes, it's a very, very, very controversial topic because everybody seems to be split. You have your purists that believe that, music is an art, which it is. And, that's the way it should be seen on every part of the process. And you have other people like me, Ed, and other people that do believe that whilst it is an art form and, you never ever lose the song, the reason that it's called engineer is because we have to engineer records. And for people like us, we believe that an engineer is there to, one, fix problems, two, get better translation and basically, get the vision of the artist and basically make it 5-10% better if possible and get that vision to translate to as many systems as possible. So I've always seen a mixer very much like a mastering engineer, where it's it's a critical ear on the mix. And I believe that to have a critical ear, there has to be a level of technical expertise to be able to justify the role of mix engineer. Because to me, if you're just getting a few plugins in and you're just going off by feel and you don't hardly want to change anything because, the producer and the artist are very, very close to the rough and the demo, and I don't want to change it because I don't want to push them off. And you're listening to the song on your high quality monitoring and you can hear problems, then to somebody like me, I'd be like, well, you need to fix that. That's your job. Just because they can't hear that problem doesn't mean that other people won't be able to hear that problem. And many people have kind of chastised us over the years by kind of talking about overly technical, and sometimes people feel that audio engineering is too scientific, and all the stuff we talked about last week with distortion and talking all about acoustics, and again I've went into oversampling, and Nicholas De Lorenzo from Panorama Mastering and Dan Worrell and stuff have all went into very geeky things about understanding the tools that we use. And I do think that there needs to be an element of technical expertise in this craft, because if there's not, then in my opinion, what really is a mixer's job in 2025? What's your viewpoint on it, Ed?
I feel like we are quality control filters and quality refinement filters, and I guess that is what mastering is as well, which is what you've said. I think we're also in a phase now where producers are recording, producing and mixing as they go. And a lot of artists are happy with how far they're taking the mix. And I'm hearing so often now that the producer's sending things to mastering and they're not sending it to a specialist mix engineer, either for budget reasons or they're confident in what they're doing. And some of them are very good at mixing. I do feel a lot of these people are missing out the 10% that a specialist mix engineer can deliver. Just as I would always feel a mastering engineer might tweak something, 2, 3, 4, 5%. But I think it's worthwhile investing in that additional phase of the journey. But in terms of, how good you have to be, I think you have to understand every facet of the job to be a master at it. I don't think it'd be sensible. I mean, I'm sure there are people who just, go by ear, a bit of this, bit of that. And that's great. But at some point, to master something, you have to be in control of all the parameters. And that means knowing all the parameters and understanding them all. That means knowing everything about clipping and limiting and, compression and distortion that can induce, and, how compression can help something fit further back or closer towards you in a mix, more intimate or louder, or, all these little elements that are about capturing a feeling and are about the artistry. Those things very much, if you wield those tools intelligently and knowledgeably, you can really be the artist, and the master artist of, painting the picture of how the song's supposed to sound. Yeah, I'm definitely on the side of being more educated on this than less educated. I'm sure there are examples that we know who have kind of got to a point in the industry without really knowing much, and you think, okay, I would hazard a guess that's a lot smaller number than the people who are really studying and training to be better. But I think in this day and age, you just have to be so good. You can't be ignored. But to get to that point, to stand out in a plethora of engineers on all levels, I think you have to study everything to physically get that good.
I think what many people get confused about is that you've got industry engineers and they watch Mix with the Masters and they'll be like, yeah, but they only need a bit of EQ and a bit of that, and it's all about taste and blah, blah, blah. When, and the reality of the industry is that a lot of these engineers are already given artists due to the way that they're brought up. So, for example, if you start off in a studio and you work under a big mixer and then you meet such and such and you get to work on a certain album, then you get to work with a certain artist, and, you kind of get brought up in that engineering world where you get to learn the things that you need to know. And I think the difference is for us, the things that we need to know coming from a place that's outside the industry, in my opinion, we need to know a lot more than other people because, in my opinion, we have a lot more issues that need to be fixed, because at the end of the day, we don't have the plethora, the quality, the experience of producers that a lot of the industry, engineers have, and they're very blessed to have. For example, many people have always said to me that, that your Spike Stents, for example, Spike Stent was always blessed with a really good room. Like when he worked at Olympic, he was given, an amazing room, the best speakers, the best gear that money could buy at the time. And then I can't remember which was the next studio that he moved to, but again, it was one of the best rooms in the facility and stuff. So again, a lot of these big engineers, again, if you think about even Larrabee and stuff like that, Mane and Dave Pensado and Jason, they were all blessed with the best of facilities to start off with, with the plethora of experience. You think about Jason, he had David to learn from, and again, David had other people that he learned from, and yada, yada, yada. I think that for the modern engineer, I think learning the technical side is actually another bow in your armoury, and it gives you, another way of competing, because we don't have the benefit of having the network that so many other industry engineers have. For me, I feel like we've got to work 2 or 3 times as hard in regards to our technical abilities to be able to stand out and be able to compete. Now, I'm not saying that we work harder than the industry engineers that are having to do 4-hour mixes, maybe 4 mixes a day sometimes. They're working long hours, dedicated. Please do not twist my words and make out that we're saying we work harder. What I'm talking about is, the actual engineering work that we have to do. We don't have assistants. Me and Ed and Thomas can't afford assistants. We have to do all the mix prep. We have to do all the editing. We have to, and work just as fast sometimes. Sometimes me and Ed have got crazy deadlines where it's right, can you get that done in a couple of days? And we're like, oh, yeah, okay, we can do it. And, we have to bash it out. And for me, having to do everything DIY as well, me and Ed don't have the budgets that a lot of the label engineers have that work in these big studios, which means that we've got to rabbit hole acoustics, and we've got to learn all about speaker design, and we've got to learn our tools. We've got to try and reverse engineer a lot of things that have been handed down, and gate kept, by the industry. So how do you feel, Ed, about me saying that the technical side for modern mixers like us outside of the industry is almost, something that should never be ignored, because we almost do genuinely need to have more technical know-how, because the mixes that we are going to be given most likely are going to have more problems in them.
DistroKid sponsor the Working Audio Tools podcast, and you can get 30% off your first year's subscription using the VIP link in the YouTube video description and podcast show notes. DistroKid makes distribution of your music easy with unlimited uploads, and you get to keep 100% of your royalties and earnings. Join over 1 million artists who rely on DistroKid to get their music into Spotify, Apple Music, YouTube Music, TikTok, Tidal, Instagram, and all other streaming platforms now and in the future. The new DistroKid app is available on iOS. Go and download it from the App Store now. From here, you can upload new releases. You can see your DistroKid earnings and withdraw these earnings. You can view and share your hyperfollow links. You can check your streaming statistics from Spotify and Apple, and even add and edit lyrics and song titles. So keep track of your releases on the move with the new DistroKid app, available on iOS. Download it from the App Store now. I think we need to be very careful not to suggest that, and this, I know this is not what you're suggesting and it's not what I'm suggesting, that anyone who's in their position of influence at the top of the industry is there kind of because they've just floated their way to the top. The guys who are legends
absolutely not
are genuinely brilliant at what they do.
Correct.
And it took them years and decades to hone their craft to that point, and they deserve all the credit. But you make a good point in that once in those environments, a lot of the cycle of credits that are going to come through the studio anyway, may have been a little bit easier to get. Once that train is rolling, it's easier to keep that moving than it is to start the train rolling, which is what we're doing from a standing start. And yes, the other good point was that a lot of these people were brought up and had opportunities in amazing sounding studios. There is one huge engineer, I won't mention, but we have been reliably told that he knows nothing about room acoustics because he's never had to consider it. Yep. Whereas we have to consider it because it directly affects what we do and how we do it and our translation. And in a world when there's so many people doing it, the general standard is so ridiculously, painfully, frustratingly higher than ever. You have to be that good to get anywhere, I feel like. And this has been part of my frustration on this journey. I've thought many times, like, why isn't this move? Why aren't people coming in through the door, marketing aside? Is it just because you're not good enough yet? I'm not saying now. I feel like I'm at a very good point where I'm confident with what I'm doing. But I think it just took so long. Whereas what might have been acceptable 20 years ago, we might have been, last year we might have been good enough to mix, top 10 hits 30 years ago, say.
Yeah.
Let's be safe, 40 years ago. Whereas now, the standards just got so freaking good that you have to go with it. And that involves understanding understanding speaker design so you can understand distortion and understand room correction and be able to understand room EQ wizard readings so you can hear where harmonic distortion might be affecting your low end, which might then mean your mix doesn't translate on a laptop or one specific device because you have to get an average. But that is striving for us to be the best that we can be. I mean, you hear these top industry guys working on one set of speakers that, learn the speaker, man. Cool. I almost feel like it's a luxury being at that point. Because I just do not feel confident on any set of speakers I've heard or used in any room that I've had, although they've all been compromised, as documented on my channel. I wouldn't trust any one of those sets of speakers, primarily the rooms though, to just mix on one set. Because they all have their own characteristics. Maybe we've learnt too much, Paul. Maybe we've learnt too much about these things and we've been spoilt with YouTube that we have had access to different sets of speakers and then we've heard, that does something at 2K. That does something at 125. That does something at 10K. That does something at 200 hertz. Right. And you start compiling this toolbox of things that you need to think about when you're doing a mix and you think, right, well, I'm pushing 200 on that. Or hang on, that sounds good on these speakers, but on the laptop, it's going to blow the laptop speakers out. Or, right, there's a lot of 125 there, which sounds good on these, but is that going to translate, to a soundbar? All these things. I mean, are we overdoing it? Are we too knowledgeable now and we're losing track of where we are? Or are the results from our recent work starting to really speak for themselves?
I would say it's starting to speak for itself. I think, when we had Leo Sargon on the podcast, I think, he made a good point to us that we have the technical chops. What we need is to put all of that technicality into practice. So like a good example of this, right, was on my Discord, I was speaking to somebody about headphones, and they were asking me a lot about headphone this and translation this, and have you tried this and this, because I've got the Dan Clark Noir X, and he was like, and I think he was wanting to get really into the scientific part. He was like, well, I think we should learn a little bit more about this, and Paul, what about this and this science and this theory, that. And I basically had said to him, right, I've not heard any of your mixes in a while. What to do is, I'm not going to answer any more theoretical questions for you until you start sending me a few of your most recent headphone mixes. And I was trying to explain to him that, with theory, there's always practice, and the two of them go hand in hand. And I think that you could have all the practice side of it. You could like be mixing, but a lot of the times not having the technical understanding could be the thing that limits the practical side. And I think that what we have been getting better at balancing is the two. And that's why I think it's important to stress here that we're never saying that technicality is what's going to win you a mix. What we believe is that for modern engineers, the best balance of both is going to get you the mix. Of course you need, to remember that it's a song. Of course you need to remember musicality. Of course you need to try and remember the groove. You know what I mean? You need to remember the feel. You need to listen to the song, most importantly. It's one of the things I get from Mix with the Masters is that the best, Leslie Braithwaite, I don't know exactly how to say his last name, but he's, everything I've watched of him, he always talks about the song first and the artist's vision and what he hears, and then, right, how can I make that 5 to 10% better? But again, he's using the technical part of his brain, and I do find that, okay, I'm not going to say who, there's a huge, massive mixer that we have been told isn't technical at all, pure feel, like all feel, like doesn't even want to talk about anything technical. If you talk,
Pinball wizard of mixing.
Yeah, if you talk to him about anything technical, he switches off.
Smell.
So like there are a lot of people out there that are like, I don't really need to know much about the technical side, I just work off feel and it works for them. But at the end of the day, as we said earlier, this is a very, 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 very competitive market, more competitive than it ever has been and it probably ever will be. I think I can't see it getting any more competitive, Ed. I think we're like fucking
AI is going to send it one or two ways, because we're either going to be competing with quantum computers, or we're not going to be competing with anyone because everyone's given up.
Yeah, that's a good point. So yeah, I think, trying to get better at the craft and understanding your tools, because I think what people aren't really getting is that, yeah, you can look at all the great mixers of the past and it's all about feel and groove and blah-de-blah-de-blah. When you're in the place that we're in, where we're trying to fight for a fucking £300 mix, if that, you know what I mean? We're at a point where everybody is at such a high quality now because technology is so affordable, and that a lot of the information isn't gatekept anymore. That's all out there now. Like for people like me and Ed, we do need to try and find an extra 5 or 10% that I believe people maybe 10, 20 years ago didn't need to find. We do need to be, as Ed says all the time, and it's for me, the quote that always sticks in my head, you need to be that good that you cannot be ignored, which is why I'm always trying to be as forceful as I can to have a sound. I am known as the guy that gives you a really good Paul third vocal, and I work very hard to get separation and for everything to be heard. Yes, I understand. That doesn't make me very flexible because many people don't want that. If you watch Mix with the Masters, a lot of the time it is demo-itis, it is stick to the rough, it's know your place, know your role, shut your mouth, and just, genuinely give me back what I gave you 5 to 10% better, and I don't really want to hear that much of a difference. That is a big part of the industry.
Jason Joshua's story is amazing for that. When he did a mix for someone, gave them the Jason Joshua sound, they hated it. They said, we wanted it more, really disappointed. So he ran their rough mix through God Particle and they loved it. Yep. Even happens to him. I think you raise a very good point in terms of marrying theory with practicality. And I think you and I have spent 2 years rabbit holing a lot of theory.
Yep.
And now I feel like we're just getting the practical side to align.
I agree.
With the theory. And, speaking to MSM, he's someone who, if you think we rabbit hole...
he's away, man. I can't even catch him.
He's out in the universe somewhere, rabbit holing, just all sorts. He loves it. He absolutely loves audio and everything about it. And he's obsessed. And he's obsessive, and it's fascinating, and he's a fascinating guy to speak to. And he has transcended theory, where his theory is so advanced on every level, and his ability is so advanced that he's just on the level that he is. And I think that's where we need to get to. And a great example of this that I had, there's only been once I've bollocked a live sound engineer as a musician, because he had come straight out of college and he'd learned all this theory and he hadn't really done many gigs. And there's two ways of gain staging when you do a sound engineer job. If you're on a festival and you're front of house and you're not doing monitors, you might be in control of the gain splits, or that might be the monitor go. Then you basically adjust. What a lot of guys do on festivals is put all the faders to 0 and then they mix with the gains. It's a bit of an old school way of doing it. I don't think people do it really with digital desks, but that's an old traditional way that was taught in this school. Now, if you then go on a wedding gig and you put all the faders to 0 and then you're mixing with gains, on that same desk when you're doing in-ear monitors for the musicians, every time you change the gain, you're fucking everyone's in-ear monitor mix up. And we did one set on this gig and I went out and I said, "What are you doing?" And he said, "Oh," and I looked at the desk and all the faders were at 0 and I was like, "Why are they all at 0? And he said, "Oh, I'm mixing with the gain." And I have to admit, I laid into him a bit because I said, "Right, take that theory, throw it out the fucking window and bring this theory onto this gig, set the gains exactly as they should be and don't fuck with people's in-ears." Clearly, I'm still quite emotional about it. But,
just a little bit.
but it was just, he was so cocksure of what he was doing because he'd been to some, reputable college. And I was like, that's fine. But what they've done is not told you the right information for this job. I'm now telling you this and you will never make this mistake again. And you'll be a twice as good engineer for knowing the difference between the two vastly different types of gig.
Yeah.
So that's the case of, he learned the hard way that night, marrying theory with practicality, because his theory did not match up with the practicality. And what we need for that, to further our marrying of theory and practicality, is just a lot more experience.
I agree. And I think as well...
But it's coming in. I mean, mixes are coming in by the week at the moment. It's great.
Yeah. And I think, look, at the end of the day, many people will be like, "Oh, Paul, look how much time you've wasted on, rabbit holing headphones." And I'm like, yeah, but my mixes are getting better. I could get to a point where I could mix anywhere in the fucking world and get a mix that translates because I took the time to understand the theory on how to mix on headphones, how to EQ them right, how to get the right EQ, about headphone amps and power, and how that translates to, even speakers and monitoring and conversion and blah-de-blah-de-blah.
I mean, you've probably taken it further than anyone actually needs to take it.
You could say that, but at the end of the day, there's not that many people out there that we know that can genuinely get, super consistent mix-to-mix results just on headphones. Many people say they can mix on headphones, but they're not really. They're using them as secondary checks. And, to really nail headphones, you need to learn them inside and out. There's a lot of theory involved, and when you get it, you can just crack on. That's why I've been going through the journey of getting the right pairs of headphones that translates the way that I need them to translate. Or ARIA Organics,
to deliver your artistry.
Correct. Like ARIA Organics, Emmerich can get them to translate perfect. His engineers, his assistants can do it. I can get them to translate to everything bar the energy. I feel like I sometimes don't get the overall energy of the track. So I need something that's a little bit more obvious and a little bit more transient heavy, a little bit more speed that's a little bit more obvious for me.
You can learn that though.
I tried with the organics, and it was the consistent thing with the organics was all my mixes were that's what the organics are great for. Amazing balance. I can get like a perfectly balanced mix, and people will say to me, "Yeah, Paul, panning's perfect. Yeah, like separation, amazing. Balance, yeah. Energy wise though, it just everything kind of sims like it's on an even plateau. Just kind of, and you've heard that on a lot of my organic mixes, and I've made, I think, 6 mixes, and all had the same thing. And sometimes I would get the energy too much. I would be overcompensating so much, and then it'd come out too punchy, and I was like, I just cannot get the right for me. So I had to then go out and figure out what that was, and then, that's why I've got the headphones I've got. But, very quickly, because we do genuinely want to do a quicker episode this week, because I'm pretty sure I've got COVID and I'm feeling rubbish. So I think the last point I would like to make, Ed, would be a very important point to make, is that in the industry, especially if you look at mix for the masters, a lot of them are still following that chain where they are still going to mastering engineers. For people like me and Ed in the modern world, not only do we have to achieve professional mix results, that does compete with, people in the industry, we're also having to do a mix and a master because people want it all in one. So not only do we need to deliver good mixes, we also need to be fucking mastering engineers and find a way of basically mastering our mixes, during the process. And that there takes so much technical prowess. There is nobody on this planet that I know that can achieve a loud, competitive, I'm talking like -6, -5 lufts, competitive master just by going off feel. You need to have technical chops. You need to have technical theory to understand how to get and how to manipulate audio in certain ways to get a -6, -5 lufts master to sound still dynamic. Because that's the thing that amateur mixing masters always struggle with. I hear it all the time where you hear it and it's just like fucking the whole thing's flat and condensed and it's just the bass is blowing out and it's pumping. It's a hard thing. And, there's a lot of technicalities. People think mastering engineers are just like, yeah, just move this, a little bit of dB here, a little bit of that and that. It's very critical, but when needed, those guys, girls, them's days, they can work very technically. They have like a lot of technical understanding up here on what they need to do, but it could be a very fine move that just fixes one specific, issue, something that just changes it where you don't really notice it, but you do notice it. The arts and subtle nuances of mastering. It's really difficult for us. And I think that for me to end it, Ed, it would be, we need to stop trying to, completely disengage with science and technicalities all because it's fucking hard and it's not exciting and it's not as like musical as like, yeah, put something through tubes. Yeah, I love a bit of analog emulation and get a bit of this and that on it and get a bit of this and that on it and just feel the groove, man. Just, if you need to put the low end up 12 dB at 60 hertz, and you're feeling it, on my 5-inch speakers, and yeah, it's working because if it's good, it sounds good. Okay, if good is good, I suppose, we would probably argue with that in terms of translation, but there needs to be a marriage of the two. I cannot, Ed, my autism cannot allow engineering to be lost. It is a craft. There is a science behind it. Audio is science. Everything in this world is fucking science at the end of the day. It's just, you need to be able to marry the two. I totally agree. If you're too scientific and you lose the emotion and you lose the vibe, then yeah, you can get, for me, like an organic mix where it's like, technically everything's fucking spot on, but the artist is like, yeah, he just got the vibe better. If you just maybe had the right energy and a little bit of a better vibe in there, yeah, man, you would be the perfect mix engineer for me. So the two are important. It's just that I think people seem to lean one way or the other. Seems to be like, yeah, analog gear, yeah, warmth, yeah, vibe and feel, yeah. I don't want to learn that because it's too hard and it's like geeky and I'm losing the music, man. And like you get loads of science guys and girls and thems and theys that are like, yeah, but the science is the science and yeah, we shouldn't be doing that because theoretically it's wrong. And I'm like, the two of them are a marriage and for me, a proper engineer can blend the two. And I don't think we should lose either or. It's just trying to find the best balance of the two. So yes, you do need to learn stuff and you do need to read books. And yes, you do need to fucking learn about Nyquist sometimes and you do need to learn about power and distortion and fucking what a plugin's doing and whether you need to use fucking linear phase oversampling or fucking, minimum phase or linear phase and, the effects of that and blah-de-blah-de-blah. There's a lot of technical stuff that if you understand it enough in the right time, in the right scenario, could be the thing that gets you the gig over somebody else. That's it.
Powerful sentence to end on. And I agree. On that technical bombshell.
Yeah.
Let's keep this episode under half an hour. Badoom. Right. It's been emotional. Leave your comments. I've got a feeling that's going to be a controversial one in the comments,
Probably.
Paul. Keep it coming, guys, because we do get ideas for episodes off what will you guys say in the comments. Thanks for listening. Hey there, Ed here. You may recognise my voice from doing all the other DistroKid advert segments. This time I didn't want to just do a typical advert talking about stuff to do with DistroKid. I actually wanted to give you my feedback about the service because I genuinely do use DistroKid for uploading my music. And I know Paul does, and it turns out Dan Worrell does as well. I've used DistroKid since 2019. As you can see on the screen, I have 6 releases so far. It is genuinely super easy to use. The tracks get into Spotify within 24 hours, which is remarkable. Apple Music takes a little bit longer. I'd suggest giving that 10 to 14 days. The hyperfollow links are really useful for advanced promotion of your tracks, and the promo cards are really great visual aids for social media promotion. Ooh, I particularly like that one. DistroKid collect all the royalties from your streaming services, and here you can find an itemized breakdown of where all your income has come from. There's also a DistroKid referral where you can save your friends $10 per sign-up by creating your own VIP referral link.